Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel, PEBC Drive.
We are going to have total 15 lectures under General Pharmacology where we will talk about various aspects of pharmacology like what is pharmacology, pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics and adverse drug reaction. So in this session I am going to talk about what is pharmacology and brief introduction of pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics and adverse drug reaction, because these three are main pillars of our pharmacology, or you call it general pharmacology. So without further delay, let's move on to our session. So pharmacology is science of drug. It is derived from a Greek word pharmakon and logos. Pharmakon means a drug and logos means to study or to discuss it. So pharmacology is nothing but a study of drug. Various aspects of drug, how these drugs act, what they does to our body, what we do to these drugs, how toxicity is produced, and everything about drug is study of pharmacology. It deals with the interaction of administered chemicals with the living system. So drug is nothing but a chemical, right? Drug is a chemical. When we administer this chemical, how this chemical interacts with the living system, that is what we are going to study in our pharmacology. Pharmacology includes all aspects of knowledge about drugs. As I said, all aspects of knowledge about drug, but most importantly, those that are relevant to effective and safe use of drugs. The most important part of pharmacology is to talk about the drugs which are for our safe use, for prevention of disease, for cure of disease, for diagnosis, for treatment purpose, for analyzing purpose. So that is what drugs are, right? And that is what we are going to talk about in this session in brief. Moving on, history of pharmacology. So pharmacology as an experimental science was piloted by Rudolf Buckim, who founded the first Institute of Pharmacology in 1847 in Germany. He started this laboratory to study various actions of drug in his own house, where he established this laboratory. Following this, in the later part of 19th century, Oswald Schimberg, who is also known as father of pharmacology, started working on this. Oswald Schimberg, with his some disciples, put forward some of the fundamental concepts of pharmacology. The main two divisions of pharmacology are pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. So pharmacodynamic. So dynamic is derived from a Greek word dynamis. Now we know pharmaco means a pharmakon and dynamis means power. So pharmacodynamic is a power of drug. What drug can do to our body, or what drug does to our body, that is what pharmacodynamic is all about. This includes physiological and biochemical effects of drug. Now physiological means related to the function of our organ system. Physiology, that is function of our organ system, and what these drugs are doing to the physiology of our body. That is what we are going to study in this dynamic. Apart from that, biochemical effects means effects on the biological molecules. Biological molecules, let's say for example, it is glucose. So some drugs will alter blood glucose level. That is biochemical effect of drug. That is what we are going to study. Apart from this, their mechanism of actions at organ system, subcellular level, macromolecular levels. We are going to also study the mechanism of drugs action, how these drugs are acting on the organ system level, on subcellular level, on other micromolecular level, how these drugs are forming their action. Let's have a beautiful example, that is Dolo 650, one of the most widely taken administered drug, that is Dolo 650, or you call it the main ingredient of this drug is paracetamol. Now, whenever we take this drug through oral route, right, means orally we take this drug will reach to our GI tract, let's say stomach. Now in stomach, this drug is broken down, or you call it disintegrated. After disintegration, this drug is dissolved, and after dissolution, this will enter to our bloodstream. That is process of absorption, right? So now, then after what will happen? So after drug is administered and absorbed into the bloodstream, it will go to various cells. It is distributed to various organ systems, various tissues and cells of our body. Now as soon as drug will reach to the cell, number of chemical reactions are going on in a living cell, and drug is going to interrupt in one of this chemical reaction and produce or alter the response of that cell. That is what drug is doing, right? So mechanism of action of drug. So drug will bind to a receptor, it will induce a specific signal and ultimately produces a response. That is what mechanism of drug is. Okay. Next is, let's talk about a beautiful example of adrenaline. So whenever adrenaline is administered, it will reach to our bloodstream ultimately. Now from bloodstream, drug is going to be distributed in various cells, and on the surface of the cells there are adrenoreceptors. So drug will interact with these adrenoreceptors, or you call it adrenergic receptors. What is receptor first? So receptor is a macromolecule which is made up of protein which is present on the surface of cell or inside the cell, and it initiates the reaction. Receptors does not take part in the reaction, but it will only initiate the reaction. There are 4 types of receptor in pharmacology. One is G protein coupled receptor, ion channel receptor, enzyme linked receptor, and nuclear receptor. Now each drug is having a specific receptor to be bind on, right? So there is a lock and key mechanism with drug and receptor. Now focusing on our example of adrenaline, so adrenaline will bind to specific adrenoreceptor. Adrenoreceptor is a type of G protein coupled receptor. So what will happen? So a signal will be generated by this G protein coupled receptor. So G protein mediated stimulation of adenyl cyclase. Now adenyl cyclase is an enzyme. What enzyme does in our body? So enzyme either initiates the reaction or enzyme speeds up the reaction. Here adenyl cyclase, which was inactive initially, now it is converted to active form, and in presence of this enzyme what will happen? So there is conversion of ATP to cyclic AMP. So ATP to cyclic AMP in presence of active adenyl cyclase. So that is another signal. So first signal was activation of adenyl cyclase. Second signal is conversion of ATP to cyclic AMP, right? Now what will happen? Due to this, there is response is generated from the cell at the cellular level. Let's say this all process occurred in the cardiac cell. So adrenaline bound to the receptor, adrenoreceptor present on cardiac cell. So what will happen? At the end, the response is stimulation of this cardiac cell. Another, let's say this drug adrenaline is bound to pancreatic cells. Receptor present on this pancreatic cells. So what will happen? So there is release of glucose and causes hyperglycemia. Third is, let's say this drugs bound to the liver cells or hepatic cells. So what will happen? So glycogenolysis will occur. Means breakdown of glycogen to glucose will take place. So that is kind of response due to a specific drug. Moving on, the topics which will be covered in the next sessions regarding pharmacodynamics are principle of drug action, mechanism of drug action, types of receptors, dose response relationship, and types of drug effects. Moving on to our next topic, that is pharmacokinetic. So kinesis is a Greek word from which this word kinetic is derived, right? Kinesis means movement and pharmakon means drug. So movement of drug is our pharmacokinetic. It is what body does to a drug. When we take this drug orally, it will move to our GI tract, it will be absorbed, then it will enter to bloodstream, it will go to various cellular levels, again it will come to liver, again it will pass from urine outside of body. Right? So movement of drug from taking it from mouth or any other source to excretion of drug. Throughout this process, what our body is doing to this drug, what changes are produced by this drug, that is what we are going to talk about in pharmacokinetics. Pharmacokinetics includes absorption, distribution, binding, localization or storage of drug, then after biotransformation and excretion. So what happens when we take this drug orally? It will reach to our GI tract, the drug is broken down or disintegrated, then after it is dissolved, and then after it is absorbed from the blood vessels present over there. Just like our food, whenever we eat, what is done, what happens? So this food enters to our stomach, it is metabolized and small particles are absorbed from the bloodstream as nutrients. Just like that, drug is also absorbed from the from the GI tract, right? And it will enter to the bloodstream. After entering to the bloodstream, drug is distributed to various parts of our body via this blood, to various parts, various organ systems, various tissues, various cells, and it will remain in this cell. It is bound to that cell or it will stored in that cell for a while. Next process is biotransformation. So after that, drug will again come to the bloodstream. So from this cellular environment, drug will again come to the bloodstream and it will reach to the liver, which is chemical factory of our body. So in liver, what happens in liver? There is process of biotransformation. Thousands of enzymes are present in liver which takes part in this process. Biotransformation is nothing but an alteration of chemical, alteration of drug in a way that it is easily excreted from our body. Right? And lastly, after alteration, after chemical change, there is excretion of drug. Right? So, drug is excreted from urine or by exhalation or by fecal material or by any other route, just like sweats. Okay. So, let's take an example to understand pharmacokinetics. Example of paracetamol. So paracetamol is rapidly and almost completely absorbed orally, attaining peak blood level within 30 to 60 minutes. So what happens when we take this paracetamol orally? It will reach to our stomach. In stomach, this drug is broken down, right? It is disintegrated, that is broken down, and then after it is dissolved in that fluid, in the fluid present in stomach. So it is dissolved in that, and then after from this dissolved fluid it is absorbed. Just like our food, we take food, it is broken down in stomach and other parts of GI tract, and then after the nutrients are absorbed. The same thing occurs with the drug. So nutrition are absorbed the same way drugs are also absorbed. For absorption of drug from GI fluid to bloodstream, there are number of transport systems are present. You call it active transport, passive transport, various transporters, facilitated transporters, right? So this helps the drug for its absorption in the bloodstream, right? Now here is one beautiful line that the peak blood level is attained within 30 to 60 minutes. It doesn't mean that action of drug will start after 30 to 60 minutes, but it means that maximum concentration of drug in blood is achieved after 30 to 60 minutes of orally taken time, right? Moving on, after the drug is absorbed, 25% of drug is bound to plasma protein and drug is widely and almost uniformly distributed into the body. So 25% drug is bound to plasma protein. So we take this drug is absorbed into the bloodstream. Now in bloodstream there are various proteins available. For example, albumin is there, glycoprotein is there, right? On these proteins drugs are bound. When drug is bound to the protein, it is in inactive form, and when drug is free, it is in active form, right? So free drug is only active drug. When drug is bound with plasma protein, it is not active, right? So 25% of drug is bound to plasma protein. So 25% of paracetamol is bound to plasma protein. Remaining drug is distributed uniformly into the various parts of our body. Moving on, it is extensively metabolized in the liver, primarily by glucuronide and sulfate conjugation into the active metabolites. So after distribution, what happens? In distribution, drug is distributed to various cells, various tissues. Now, what happens? When drug is distributed in these tissues, the concentration of drug is decreased in bloodstream, right? Initially, what happens there after taking the drug? And talking in terms of concentration. So what happens when you take this drug orally? It will enter to your stomach. There is high concentration of drug in stomach now. So it will move to low concentration, which is bloodstream. So drug is moving to bloodstream, that is process of absorption. So now bloodstream is having higher concentration. So from bloodstream, drug is distributed into various cellular levels, right, in various tissues where there is no concentration of drug. So once again, between bloodstream and cellular level, there is a bridge of concentration, high and low, right? In cells there is low concentration or no concentration of drug. In bloodstream there is high concentration, so drug will move once again from high to low concentration. Now there will be a time when bloodstream will be having low concentration of drug. So what happened at that time? At that time, from tissues, drug will again come to this bloodstream and this will reach to liver. Now liver is a chemical factory where all drugs are metabolized. Okay. It is chemical factory, it is having various enzymes, and these enzymes ultimately causes biotransformation. Bio means living, transformation means change. So change in the form of drug using living cellulars, using living enzymes of body, that is biotransformation. The biotransformation of drug is done ultimately to convert in a form which is easily excreted by body, right? Now here another word for biotransformation is used, metabolism. Now metabolism is not proper word because metabolism includes anabolism, that is synthesis, and catabolism, that is breakdown. So more preferable word is biotransformation, only change in a form of chemical, change in a form of drug. After biotransformation, what happens? There is excretion. So let's talk about this biotransformation of paracetamol. So it is extensively metabolized in liver. So extensive biotransformation occurs in liver and primarily by glucuronide and sulfate conjugation. Right? So glucuronide, it is for glucuronic acid and sulfonic acid, right? Sulfate conjugate, sulfonic acid. So glucuronide acid and sulfonic acid both are bound to our drug. And lastly, excretion of drug. So it is excreted in urine. It has plasma half-life of 2 to 3 hours and clearance value of 5 ml per kg per minute. So all drugs, ultimately drugs are excreted widely from urine, other is from fecal material or via exhalation or via sweat. Right. Moving on, this is the curve of concentration versus time. Now in this curve you can see that initially there is at 0 time there is no blood concentration of drug. Right. Initially concentration increases in the plasma slowly with time, and that is part of absorption, that shows absorption of drug. Right. This is the one, absorption of drug. Now after some time drug will reach to the peak concentration in the blood. Now slowly drug will distribute in other tissues, right? So that is distribution. So blood concentration of drug will decrease as drug is distributed in other tissues of body. Then after what happens? Then after the drug concentration will again fall down as drug is eliminated. Elimination of drug is metabolism and excretion. Both metabolism and excretion is combinedly known as elimination. So drug is eliminated from body. So with the time the concentration of drug is decreased. Right. Moving on, the topics which will be covered under pharmacokinetics are mechanism of absorption, concept of bioavailability and bioequivalence, volume of distribution, plasma protein binding, biotransformation, enzyme induction and inhibition, excretion, and kinetics of elimination. Moving on, the last pillar of general pharmacology, that is adverse drug reaction. So adverse effect is any undesirable or unintended consequence of administered drug. So whenever the drug is administered and it produces some unintended use for which we have not taken this drug, let's say if we take any drug, let's say for example paracetamol. So it produces nausea and vomiting, right? It is common side effect or common adverse effect. A more prominent or more serious effect of taking paracetamol for long time is liver injury, right? Which is not intended. That why we are not taking this drug from this kind of injuries to our body, right? But still it is present. It comes as a gift with the drug, which is not intended and which is undesirable. So that is adverse effect. Now this adverse effect is very broad term. It includes all kind of nauseous effects, let's say minor effects, serious effects, and even fatal effects. So as per WHO, the definition of adverse drug reaction is any noxious change which is suspected to be due to a drug, occurs at dose normally used in men, and requires treatment or decrease in dose, or indicates caution in the future use of drug. That is what exact definition of adverse drug reaction is. Moving on, pharmacovigilance. As per WHO, pharmacovigilance is a science and activities relating to detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effect or any other drug related problems. So what happens? A drug is whenever a drug enters to market, okay, it is taken by thousands of people, right? Now, before entering the market, drug passes from the clinical phases. We call it clinical trials. And in clinical trials, drug is given to certain limited number of patients, let's say 1000 to 5000 patients in last phase of clinical trial. But it does not mean that if this 5000 patient responded well with this drug, then drug will not have any other adverse or unintended effect in market. So as the large number of population is not covered, the fourth phase of clinical trial, that is post-marketing surveillance or pharmacovigilance, is done. In pharmacovigilance, what is done? So each and every company is having its own pharmacovigilance department, which monitors vigilance, means to monitor the adverse effect of drug, which is reported by a registered pharmacist, a doctor, or a patient, or a nurse, or any healthcare professional. So that is pharmacovigilance. So in today's session, we talked about what is pharmacology, a brief history of pharmacology, pharmacodynamics, pharmacokinetics, and adverse drug reaction. Thank you. Hope you like my video. Please comment. Your comments are valuable. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel. Once again, thank you for watching.